Inside Africa's prison empires, where criminal networks are born, they were locked away, cut off from society, stripped of freedom. But what if prison wasn't the end of crime, but the beginning of something far more dangerous? Across parts of Africa, prison walls don't always contain crime. They reshape it. Inside overcrowded cells and underfunded systems, a hidden economy thrives, powered by gangs, corruption, and survival. From drug trafficking rings coordinated behind bars, to cybercrime operations run through smuggled phones, to violent hierarchies that control entire facilities. Behind the rusted gates, beyond the watchtowers, it evolves. This is not just incarceration. This is organized crime, evolving in captivity. This is where criminal empires are built. Across parts of Africa, prisons have become more than detention centers. They are recruitment hubs, command centers, marketplaces, and in some cases, trading grounds for the next generation of organized crime. Welcome to the Illicit Index, where we break down the systems behind global crime. Today we go inside African prisons to uncover how criminal enterprises don't just survive, they expand. The narrative of the inmate-led prison isn't just a plot for a gritty drama. In many overstretched correctional systems across Africa, it is a documented sociological phenomenon. When the state fails to provide basic necessities, a shadow government usually fills the void. Most people believe prisons are about control, but that is an illusion. Locked gates, armed guards, strict routines, but step inside many underfunded facilities across Africa, and a different reality begins to unfold. There is the problem of numbers, chronic overcrowding. The primary catalyst for the shift in power is the sheer physical impossibility of control. When a facility operates at 300% or 400% above capacity, guards cannot safely enter cell blocks, leading to a control the perimeter, abandon the interior strategy. In many Nigerian prisons and indeed other African prisons, roughly 70% of the inmate population consists of awaiting trial detainees. This creates a transient, massive population that outpaces the number of available beds. Facilities like Mala Prison in Malawi have historically reported holding over 2,500 inmates in spaces designed for 800, leading to severe outbreaks of tuberculosis and skin infections. The power shift, self-governance, in underfunded systems. The prison administration often relies on cell bosses or provosts to maintain order. This is a pragmatic, albeit dangerous compromise. The provost system. To prevent constant riots, guards empower senior inmates to manage the daily lives of others. These inmates decide who sleeps on a mattress and who sleeps on the concrete floor. The price of peace. In exchange for keeping the cell quiet, these leaders often receive perks from the staff, such as better food, access to mobile phones, or immunity from discipline. The rise of prison gangs. The numbers. In South Africa, the most famous example of this criminal structure is the numbers gangs, the 26s, 27s, and 28s. Their influence is so pervasive that they often dictate the internal economy of the prison. Inside the shadow economy of prison life, power is not random. It is structured, coded, and fiercely protected. At the center of this system are three distinct factions, each with a defined purpose, working together in a tense but functional ecosystem. The 26s operate as the economic engine. They are not the loudest or the most visibly violent, but their influence runs deep. Every cigarette traded, every contraband item smuggled in, every gambling ring, these are their domains. They understand that in prison, control of resources is control of power. Quietly, methodically, they build wealth, knowing that influence often flows from what you can provide. Between worlds stand the 27s, often referred to as the law. They are the intermediaries, the ones who maintain balance in a system that could easily collapse into chaos. When disputes arise, they step in, not just as negotiators, but as enforcers of an internal code that governs all sides. They ensure that the ambitions of the 26s do not spiral out of control, and that the aggression of the 28s remains directed. Without them, the fragile order would fracture. Then there are the 28s, the embodiment of blood and power. They are the warriors, driven by discipline, loyalty, and a strict internal hierarchy. Violence for them is not chaos. It is ritual, identity, and enforcement. They command respect not through negotiation or wealth, but through strength and reputation. Their role is to defend, to assert dominance, and to uphold the deeper codes that define the system itself. Together, these three groups form a closed circuit of power: money, law, and force, each dependent on the other, each shaping the invisible structure that governs life behind bars. The economy of scarcity. When the state fails to provide adequate food, sometimes providing only one meal of maize porridge a day, a black market economy emerges. Currency. These include items like cigarettes, soap, and increasingly mobile money transfers managed by family members on the outside. The tax. New inmates are often forced to pay a gate fee to the dominant gang in their cell just to avoid physical abuse or to secure a spot to sleep. Compromised staff. Underfunding doesn't just affect inmates, it affects the guards. Low wages and high-stress environments make staff susceptible to professional intimacy or bribery. Smuggling. In many facilities, the primary route for contraband, drugs, and phones is not through visitors, but through underpaid staff looking to supplement their income. Dependency. In some extreme cases, guards are so outnumbered that they are physically afraid of the inmates, leading to a silent pact where the inmates run the internal wings as long as they don't attempt to breach the outer walls. The resulting reality, rather than a place of correction, the prison becomes a high-pressure incubator for organized crime. An individual may enter for a minor offense, but to survive the unofficial structure, they must pledge loyalty to the very criminal networks the prison was meant to dismantle. And within this chaos, structure forms, not official, but criminal. In environments where the system struggles to maintain order, something else fills the vacuum. Power, but not institutional power, criminal power. Inside these walls, survival is not guaranteed. So, inmates organize. Groups form based on ethnicity, street affiliations, ideology, or simply the need for protection. Over time, these groups evolve into structured gangs, each with leaders, enforcers, recruiters, intelligence networks. Their rules are strict, their hierarchy is rigid, their influence extends far beyond prison walls, and once you're in, there is often no way out. Recruitment, the making of a criminal. The anatomy of vulnerability. The first 48 hours of incarceration are known as the vulnerability window. New inmates, often referred to as fresh fish or greenies, are overwhelmed by the sensory overload of overcrowding and the immediate threat of physical or sexual violence. In many overcrowded facilities, there is no separation between violent offenders and those awaiting trial for petty crimes. A first-time offender may be thrown into a cell with 100 others. The fact, without a designated bed or locker, the new inmate has no sovereign space. This environmental stress makes the offer of a specific spot to sleep, granted by a gang leader, an irresistible lure. The recruiter's value proposition. Recruiters for prison gangs, such as the 26s, 27s, or 28s in South Africa, or cultist groups in Nigerian prisons, act as a shadow social service provider. In the silent calculus of prison life, recruitment is rarely framed as coercion. It is presented as an offer. But every offer carries a deeper reality. It begins with protection. In cells where guards rarely step in after dark, vulnerability is a constant threat. The gang positions itself as a shield, a buffer between a new inmate and the unseen dangers of the night. To someone alone, that promise feels less like a choice and more like survival. Then comes food. When official rations are scarce, sometimes just one meal a day, the gang steps in to fill the gap. Bread, sugar, tinned fish, small things smuggled through hidden channels, become lifelines. Hunger has a way of reshaping decisions, and what starts as assistance quickly becomes dependence. Next is status. The transformation is deliberate. A man who entered as a target is given a new identity, a soldier, a name, a place within a rigid hierarchy. Respect, even if enforced, replaces invisibility. In an environment where identity is stripped away, this new role can feel like power. And finally, belonging. Perhaps the most powerful offer of all. The gang becomes a substitute for what prison takes: family, connection, meaning. In a system designed to isolate and dehumanize, it offers structure, loyalty, and a sense of being part of something larger. But beneath each promise lies an unspoken truth. Nothing is given freely. Every layer of protection, provision, and identity comes with obligations, often permanent, often dangerous. What is offered as survival can quietly become entrapment. The cost of entry, the initiation. Nothing comes free is the iron law of the prison subculture. Initiation rituals are designed to permanently sever the inmate's ties to civilian morality and bind them to the network through shared trauma or shared guilt. The blood requirement. In some numbers factions, initiation requires a blood-for-blood act, stabbing a guard or another inmate. This ensures the new recruit faces additional charges, effectively extending their time in the academy of the gang. The scenario: a recruiter may offer a new inmate a cigarette or a decent meal. 2 days later, they demand repayment. If the inmate cannot pay in currency, they are told the debt can only be settled through an act of violence or by becoming a mule for contraband. The network and the pipeline to the outside. The most dangerous aspect of this recruitment is that it does not end at the prison gate. The prison serves as a criminal finishing school. The post-release debt. An inmate who received protection and food during a 2-year sentence is told upon release that they still owe the organization. They are given a contact on the outside and tasked with specialized roles, scouting for robberies, moving drugs, or acting as an enforcer. Many transnational criminal organizations in West and Southern Africa use the prison system as a vetting ground. If an individual can survive and prove loyalty in the brutal environment of an underfunded prison, they are deemed reliable for high-stakes external operations. The cycle of recidivism. Once initiated, the inmate's identity is redefined. Their body is often marked with tattoos that signal their rank and affiliation to both the police and rival gangs. The branding. Tattoos are not just aesthetic, they are permanent resumes. A member of the 28s may have specific markings that indicate they have committed violence on behalf of the gang. The trap. Once branded, an inmate finds it nearly impossible to reintegrate into legitimate society. They are dead on arrival for most jobs, making the criminal network their only source of income and protection once they are back on the streets. Prisons as criminal command centers. The logistics of the cell office, contraband phones fueling prison crime rings. Contraband phones are the backbone of this phenomenon. Even in the developed countries, these smuggled phones have played key roles in crimes perfected from the insides of prisons and executed in the outside free world. In South Carolina, USA, correctional officials confiscated over 2,600 phones in a single year, hundreds in 1 month alone. These phones have been tied to drug trafficking, extortion, and even murder plots organized behind bars. For instance, in one 2010 case, inmates at Lee Correctional Institution used a contraband phone to order a hit on a correctional officer, Robert Johnson, who had been cracking down on contraband smuggling. He was shot 6 times at home by a hired gunman and survived. In another case in Puerto Rico, a Bureau of Prisons lieutenant, Osvaldo Albarradi Casañas, was murdered after inmates used smuggled phones to orchestrate the attack. To run a syndicate from the inside, a leader requires a triad of tools: unrestricted mobile access, financial channels, and human couriers. A high-ranking inmate pays a maintenance fee to certain guards. This ensures their smartphone is never seized during raids, or they are tipped off minutes before a search occurs. Coded communication. Leaders rarely send direct orders. They use slanguage or coded music lyrics and voice notes to direct hits or drug shipments, making it difficult for casual eavesdroppers to prove criminal intent. Fraud rings. The Yahoo pipeline in Nigeria. The Yahoo cyber fraud subculture has deep roots. Incarcerated fraudsters often act as the brains or mentors for younger operators on the outside. A well-known convicted Nigerian cyber fraudster serving a 24-year sentence in Lagos's Kirikiri Maximum Prison managed to run a $1 million scam from behind bars. According to reports, he used a contraband phone, internet access, and a network of accomplices on the outside to keep his operation running. He even opened 2 bank accounts under a false name, bought property worth around $65,000, and purchased a Lexus SUV registered in his wife's name. Nigeria's anti-corruption agency, EFCC, found that he'd somehow gained permission to receive medical treatment, which turned out to mean staying in a hotel and meeting with associates rather than in a hospital ward. His imprisonment had become a remote office for international scams. The benefit: from inside, the fraudster is largely untouchable by the police units roaming the streets. They are already in the prison, making them ironically safer while they continue their crimes. Kidnapping and ransom management. One of the most disturbing trends is the coordination of kidnappings for ransom from within prison walls. A gang leader in a maximum security facility receives word from an outside informant about a high-value target. The leader uses a smuggled phone to coordinate the abduction, negotiate the ransom with the victim's family, and direct the drop-off location. Investigations in Nigeria have revealed cases where ransom money was funneled into bank accounts controlled by inmates, who then used mobile money apps to pay their outside soldiers and buy influence within the prison. The drug distribution hierarchy. Prisons often act as the hub for drug logistics because they are a guaranteed market. However, high-ranking inmates often manage the external market as well. A drug lord behind bars doesn't just sell to other inmates. He uses his prison brand to maintain a territory in the city. If a rival tries to move into his street-side territory, he sends a hit order to his enforcers outside. The prison provides a safe space to negotiate with international suppliers. To the supplier, the boss being in prison is irrelevant, as long as the wire transfer hits the correct account. Headquarters is an accurate term for a criminal kingpin. Prison can be a strategic retirement with benefits. Security. Rival gangs cannot easily reach them behind state-guarded walls. Recruitment. They have a constant stream of new graduates, parolees, who they have already vetted and initiated while inside. Immunity. It is much harder to raid a person who is already in prison, creating a legal and physical paradox. Behind the walls, the operation never really stops. It simply changes form. What happens inside is planning, coordination, and control. What happens outside is execution. Corruption within the ranks usually evolves through three distinct stages. Passive complicity. The guard ignores a cell phone signal or a smell of drugs in exchange for a quiet shift or a small bribe. The Stockholm effect and physical coercion. It isn't always about money. Sometimes the crack in authority is forced by fear. In facilities where inmates outnumber guards 50-1, the staff's primary goal is to return home alive. A gang leader may threaten a guard's family, proving they know the guard's home address and the school their children attend. To protect their family, the guard agrees to leak the schedule of the next surprise raid. When the line between enforcement and complicity blurs, the psychological impact on the facility is devastating. Prison sentences end, but the networks don't. As a matter of fact, they often grow stronger. Former inmates leave with new alliances, criminal training, expanded connections. What started as survival becomes a career. Many of Africa's organized criminal groups have roots that trace back to prison networks, meaning prison is not always a place of reform. Sometimes it is a place of transformation. Prisons were designed to break crime, but in some places, they are quietly rebuilding it, stronger, smarter, more organized. The question is no longer what happens inside prisons, but rather what leaves the prisons. If you want more deep investigations into hidden systems of power, crime, and control across the world, subscribe to the Illicit Index, because the real stories are never on the surface.